It was a Friday evening, no different from the rest. I had just gotten home from my job, looking forward to relaxing with my dogs and probably getting some delivery food. But just as I was starting to unwind, a knock came at the door, one that would completely alter the course of my life. I recall opening the door, assuming it was a neighbor or a delivery for something I bought online. Instead, 2 police officers stood there, their faces stern and unreadable. My initial reaction was panic. Had I done something wrong? Was someone I knew hurt? But nothing could have braced me for their next words. "Sir, we need to speak with you concerning a daughter." My brain just stopped. A daughter? Mine? That couldn't be right. I told them they had to be mistaken. I wasn't a father, hadn't ever been close. But they pressed on, asking if I remembered someone named Kelly. The name struck me deeply. Kelly. We'd been together as teenagers, young, careless, and she was my first true love. But she ended things abruptly, without any explanation, and I never heard from her again. Until that moment. The officers informed me that Kelly had been taken into custody on drug-related offenses. When asked who could care for her child, she gave them my name. They said Kelly was certain, so they had to investigate. Right then, everything seemed to spiral. How could I have a child and not know for 15 years? My mind was racing. Was this some kind of trick? But when they brought up a DNA test, the gravity sank in. This was real. I couldn't just look away. They gave me documents and explained that my cooperation was necessary. If I truly was her father, this girl, my daughter, required a home, and quickly. Her mother was facing jail time, and there was no other family to take her. I'm not sure how long I remained there, frozen, staring at those papers. It was as if the floor had vanished beneath me. One moment, I was a man with a simple life and 2 dogs. The next, I was being told I had a teenage daughter who'd been out in the world all this time. After the police drove off, I collapsed onto the sofa, completely stunned. My emotions were everywhere. How do you even begin to make sense of something like that? How do you shift from having no children to being entirely responsible for a 15-year-old girl you've never even seen? I kept wondering if I was prepared, or if I was even capable. But the truth was, whether I felt ready or not, she was on her way, and I had to learn how to be the dad she required. Just like that, I had a daughter. And in under a day, she would be here, living under my roof. The calm, predictable life I knew had ended in a heartbeat, swapped for a situation I never could have predicted. The day Kelly came, I was an absolute mess. I'd lain awake all night, staring at the ceiling, struggling to process what was coming next. I felt completely out of my depth, with no clue what to anticipate. How do you become an instant father to a teenager? What would she be like? Would she resent me? Was I even up for this? I did what little I could to get ready. I cleared out the extra room, which had been more of a junk space until that day. I moved in some simple furniture, nothing fancy, since I didn't want to make her uncomfortable. Truthfully, I had no idea what she might need or want. So I kept it minimal, a bed, a drawer, and room for her to personalize it if she wished. I stood there for what felt like ages, scanning the room and questioning whether it would be enough. When the social worker pulled up with her, my heart was thudding. Kelly walked inside, and the first thing I noticed was how tiny she seemed. At 15, she looked much younger, almost fragile. She was silent, hardly speaking a word as she stood there with her bag, glancing around as if she were in a foreign place, which I suppose she was. I attempted to smile to make her feel comfortable, but it felt forced. What do you say to a daughter you've never met? I managed. "Hey, Kelly, I'm your dad." It felt so unnatural to say. She just gave a slight nod, still quiet. A thick silence hung between us, and I could sense she felt just as adrift as I was. The social worker, thank goodness, tried to ease the tension by showing Kelly her room. I trailed behind, watching for her reaction. She stepped inside, scanned the space, and paused. She didn't appear upset, but she wasn't happy either. I think she was just trying to take it all in. After all, she'd just been torn away from everything familiar and brought to a stranger's house with a man she was expected to call Dad. I told her she was free to change the room however she liked, decorate, rearrange, do whatever made it feel like hers. She nodded again. I could tell she was holding a lot inside, and I didn't want to pressure her, so I backed off, assuming she needed time. Over the next few days, I began to understand how much she'd endured. She was so silent, so closed off. It was clear she wasn't used to anyone caring about her. I'd often find her sitting in her room, gazing out the window or lying on the bed, lost in her thoughts. She was nothing like anything I'd pictured. I hadn't known what to imagine, but seeing her like that, it hurt. I tried to make things a little easier. I put a small snack basket in her room because I noticed she wasn't eating much. I told her she was welcome to anything in the kitchen, but that seemed to make her anxious, so I thought having something nearby might help. I didn't want her to feel like she had to sneak food, but it was clear she was still getting used to having regular meals. We had our first real conversation a few days in. It wasn't anything profound, just light chat about the dogs, school, things like that. But it was a beginning. She mentioned how much she loved reading, how it was her way of escaping reality. That really got to me. It showed just how difficult things must have been with her mom. I could tell she was trying, but I could also see how much she was hurting. At night, I'd hear her having nightmares. She'd whimper, sometimes even scream. It shattered me to hear that, knowing it was so much pain inside her that I couldn't heal overnight. I decided then that she needed professional support. This was beyond what I could manage alone. She needed someone to talk to, someone who could help her work through everything she'd been through. So I began searching for a therapist, hoping it would offer her some of the help she truly needed. Looking back, those first few days were among the most challenging. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to learn how to be a father to a girl who had already endured so much. But I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't abandon her. She'd been failed too many times before. I was resolved not to become another letdown. As days became weeks, Kelly and I gradually found our footing, though it wasn't simple. She remained guarded and quiet, and every interaction felt like solving a puzzle. But there were moments, small, fleeting ones, where I could see the walls around her soften, if only slightly. One afternoon, I found her at the kitchen table, surrounded by school books and notes, working on homework. It was such an ordinary sight, but it stuck with me because it was the first time I'd seen her truly engaged since she'd arrived. I took a seat across from her, tried to connect without being too much. When she finished, I noticed some papers left on the table. I asked what they were, just making conversation, and she mentioned offhand that they were tests from that week. I asked if I could see, and she shrugged as if it were no big deal. But when I looked, I was astonished. She'd aced every single one. Chemistry, history, geometry. Perfect scores. I was speechless. Here was this girl who'd been through hell, starting at a new school amid total upheaval, and she was excelling. I couldn't help but tell her how proud I was. I said something like, "This is incredible, Kelly. You're really brilliant." She shrugged again, downplaying it, but I caught a glimpse of pride in her eyes. She told me she loved learning, that it was her way of escaping. That hit me hard. I realized in that for her, school wasn't just about grades. It was a sanctuary, a place to disconnect from the chaos and pain. And she was exceptional at it. But there were still moments that revealed how deep her wounds ran. One evening, we went out to eat, nothing fancy. I just didn't feel like cooking and thought a change of scenery might be nice. We ended up at a small Mexican spot, and I discovered she'd never had tacos before. I was stunned, though it made sense given her past. We were having a relaxed chat, just talking about the food, when a mother walked in with her 2 young girls. They were maybe 7 or 8, laughing and joking together. I saw Kelly glance at them from the corner of her eye, and suddenly she went quiet. The light in her eyes faded, and I could see the hurt. I didn't say anything at first, thinking she might open up if she wanted to. But on the drive home, out of nowhere, she said, "Sometimes it's hard seeing girls who have good relationships with their moms. I get jealous because my mom and I never had that." Her voice wavered, and before I could respond, she began to cry. She let everything out, and I felt utterly powerless. There was nothing I could say or do to take that pain away, and it destroyed me. When we got home, she said she wanted to be alone, so I gave her space. But hearing her cry in her room that night broke me. It was one of those moments where I understood just how deep her scars went. No matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't undo those 15 years of feeling unloved and unwanted. I could be there for her now, but I couldn't change her past. That was a difficult truth to accept. I went to bed that night feeling completely defeated. I kept thinking about all the ways I'd failed her without even knowing she existed. And now here she was, carrying all that pain, and all I could do was try to be present. It didn't feel like enough, but it was all I had to give. The next morning, things returned how they'd been, quiet, distant. But I sensed that something had changed between us. She had let me in, even if only a little, and I wasn't going to take that lightly. I just had to be patient, to keep showing her that I wasn't going anywhere, no matter how tough things got. I was here to stay. I never thought things could get harder than they already were, but life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. We had just begun to find a little rhythm in our lives. Despite all the challenges, Kelly was slowly opening up, and while it wasn't easy, I felt like we were moving forward. But then, out of nowhere, everything took a turn I never saw coming. It started with Kelly feeling unusually tired. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was just the stress of everything she'd been through. New home, new school, new life. But the exhaustion didn't fade. Then she began losing weight, which worried me because she'd already been underweight when she arrived. She also looked pale, almost sickly, and no matter how much I tried to encourage her to eat, she just wasn't consuming enough. We went to the doctor, who initially thought it might be a bad cold or a virus. But weeks passed, and Kelly wasn't improving. She was still constantly tired, and that spark I'd seen when she talked about school and reading, it was gone. Something was wrong. I could feel it. After what seemed like endless appointments and tests, we finally got an answer, but not the one I'd hoped for. Kelly was diagnosed with leukemia. I remember sitting in that doctor's office, hearing those words, and feeling like the world had dropped out from under me. Leukemia, my daughter, who had already been through so much, now had to face this too. I was utterly shattered. Kelly took the news in a way that broke my heart even more. She was quiet, almost numb, and I could tell she was trying to process it all. I wanted to be strong for her, to say the right things, but I was terrified. I knew what this diagnosis meant. I'd seen relatives go through chemo, and I knew how harsh it could be. The thought of Kelly enduring that was almost too much to bear. We began chemotherapy almost immediately. The doctors were hopeful, but they also warned me that it would be a difficult journey. Kelly was in and out of the hospital, and each time she came home, she seemed weaker and more distant. The chemo was taking a toll, not just physically, but emotionally too. She started losing her hair, and the little weight she'd gained after moving and melted away. She was so thin, so fragile. There were days she barely had the energy to get out of bed. She stopped reading, which I knew was a big deal for her. Books had always been her escape, but now, even that comfort was slipping away. I tried suggesting audiobooks, thinking it might help, but she refused. It was like she was slowly letting go of the things she loved, and it frightened me. Her emotions were all over the place, which was understandable. Some days she was quiet and withdrawn. Other days, she'd snap at me over the smallest things. I knew it was a frustration and anger over what was happening to her, but it still stung. I did my best to be patient, to not take it personally, but I won't lie. There were moments it got to me. Seeing her suffer and knowing I couldn't make it better was the most helpless feeling in the world. I kept reminding myself that she was just a kid, a 15-year-old girl who'd already endured more than anyone should in a lifetime. And now, on top of everything, she was fighting cancer. I wanted to take all her pain away, to carry this burden for her, but I knew I couldn't. All I could do was be there, to hold her when she needed it, to give her space when she asked, and to let her know that no matter what, I wasn't going anywhere. The house felt so quiet during those days. The only sounds were the soft hum of the oxygen machine Kelly sometimes needed and the occasional bark from one of the dogs. I tried to keep things as normal as possible, to give her some sense of stability, but it was hard when everything felt so uncertain. The nights were the worst. I'd lie awake, listening for any sound from Kelly's room, my heart racing every time I heard her stir. I knew she was in pain, both physical and emotional, and it killed me that I couldn't take it away. There were times I'd go into her room just to sit by her bed and watch her sleep, making sure she was still breathing, still there. Those were the moments when the weight of everything crushed down on me, and I'd have to step outside just to catch my breath and try to hold myself together. I felt so many emotions all at once: fear, anger, sadness, guilt. I kept thinking, why her? Why now? She'd already been through so much, and now this. It just didn't seem fair. But I couldn't let her see how scared I was. I had to be strong for her. I had to believe that we would get through this, even on the days when it felt like the world was falling apart. The days turned into weeks, and then months. The chemo was brutal, but Kelly kept fighting. I tried to be there for her in every way I could, even when she pushed me away. And through it all, I held on to hope, praying that somehow, someway, we would find our way out of this nightmare. Tomorrow is a day that's been circled on my calendar for weeks. It's the day my daughter undergoes a stem cell transplant. I've been both dreading and anxiously awaiting this day, knowing how vital it is for her survival, but also terrified of the risks and challenges it brings. This is a final major step in her treatment, the one that could finally give her a chance at a normal life, a life she deserves more than anyone I know. The past 3 months have been some of the hardest of my life, and I know they've been even harder for Kelly. Watching her go through chemo, seeing her struggle, has been agony. She's been so strong, stronger than I think I could ever be. But there have been days when I've seen the fight leave her eyes, and those moments have been the most difficult to bear. Today, as we prepare for the transplant, I've tried to keep things as normal as possible. I know that sounds absurd given the circumstances, but I just want her to feel some sense of peace, even if it's only temporary. So we spent the day surrounded by family, people who love her and want to see her get better. My parents came over, along with my sister and her kids. Everyone brought small gifts, nothing extravagant, just little things to make Kelly smile. It's been a day filled with love and support, and I think it's helped take her mind off what's to come. We've been spoiling Kelly all day. She deserves it. I made her favorite breakfast, pancakes with strawberries and whipped cream. It's a simple thing, but she hasn't had much of an appetite lately, so seeing her eat and enjoy it felt like a small victory. Then we spent the morning watching her favorite movies, just lounging on a couch with the dogs curled up beside us. There were moments when I caught her smiling, a real, genuine smile, and for a few hours, it felt like we were just a normal father and daughter, not two people who had to endure more than a share of pain. In the afternoon, we took a walk around the neighborhood. Kelly has always loved being outside, feeling the sun on her face and the wind in her hair. Lately, she's been too weak to go far, but today she insisted on walking a bit farther. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Just being together, breathing the fresh air, was enough. I held her hand the whole time, and it reminded me of when she first came to live with me. How distant she was then, how uncertain about everything. But now, despite it all, we're closer than I ever thought we could be. As the day went on, I could see the reality of tomorrow starting to weigh on her. She grew quieter, more withdrawn, and I could tell she was scared. So was I, but I tried to keep things light, to keep her spirits up. We talked about what we'd do once she got better, places we go, things we do together. She's always wanted to see the ocean, to watch the waves and feel the sand between her toes. I promised her we'd go as soon as she was strong enough. It's a promise I plan to keep, no matter what. Tonight, as I sit here watching her sleep, I can't help but feel overwhelmed. The house is quiet. Everyone's gone home, and it's just the two of us again. I'm trying to stay positive, to believe that this transplant will work, that it will be the thing that finally turns everything around. But I'm also scared of what tomorrow will bring, scared of what could go wrong. I keep thinking about all the moments that have led to this one. The day I found out I had a daughter, the day she moved in, the first time she called me Dad. It's amazing how much my life has changed in such a short time, how much she's come to mean to me. I can't imagine a future without her, and that's what frightens me the most. But despite the fear, there's also hope. Hope that this transplant will work. Hope that Kelly will finally be able to start living the life she deserves. She's been through more than anyone should ever have to, and she's fought every step of the way. I know she's tired. I know she's scared. But I also know she's strong. Stronger than she even realizes. Tomorrow, we begin a new chapter. One that I hope leads to healing. To a future where Kelly can do all the things she's always dreamed of. It won't be easy, I know that. But as I sit here holding her hand, I know that we'll face whatever comes together. And no matter what happens, I'll be right here by her side every step of the way. So as we head into tomorrow, I'm holding on to that hope. Holding on to the belief that we'll get through this. That Kelly will get through this. Because she deserves to live, to experience the world, to have a future filled with love and happiness. And I will do everything in my power to make sure she gets that chance.